Welcome back to Somm Saturdays with Treveri Cellars. I'm Wilson Cecil, and today we're going to be talking about Riesling. If you've heard of Riesling, you probably have an opinion on it already. In almost a decade of working in the wine industry, I've rarely encountered a grape that inspires such strong and different reactions. A lot of wine professionals are devotees of Riesling. Maybe it's the grape's variety of expressions, its versatility with pairing food and wine, its screaming acidity, its underdog charm, its ability to express where it's from very effectively, or maybe just a healthy dose of wine pro groupthink. Chances are it's a combination of all those things. But when it comes to people who cannot abide the grape, generally it comes down to one thing: sweetness. See, Riesling has a bit of a legacy problem here in the United States. The grape's homeland is generally agreed to be the Rhine Valley in Western Germany. And from its first citation in a small winery's cellar log on March 13th, 1435, until the early 1900s, Riesling went from relative obscurity to being one of the great wines of Europe. It was almost as sought after as some of the famous wines of Bordeaux, the pride of German viticulture. But wine culture in the United States didn't really get much traction until the 1970s and 1980s. By that time, World War II had come and gone, leaving Germany and many European countries' vineyards in tatters. And as German wine industry rebuilt, in fact, as much of European wine industry rebuilt, the focus went from quality wine to quantity of wine. So, as wine culture was growing in the United States, the wines being exported from Germany were generally low-quality, sweet wines. And during the 1970s and 80s, that style of wine was actually pretty popular in the US. They were cheap and easy to understand, and no other brand encapsulates this style and its eventual fall from grace better than Blue Nun. Blue Nun was a wine launched in 1920, branded for and marketed to mass markets in the United Kingdom and the United States. It fell into a category of German wine known as Liebfraumilch, which is a semi-sweet style hailing from the Nahe, Pfalz, Rheinhessen, or Rheingau regions of Germany, and is generally made from Sylvaner, Riesling, or Müller-Thurgau. Now, to be clear, these wines were not then and are not now high-quality wines. In fact, they fall into the lowest tier of quality production under German wine law. Still, during the 1980s, the mid-80s in particular, Blue Nun and similar semi-sweet German wines were hitting peak popularity. But by the early 1990s, the wines were falling out of fashion. And just like bell-bottoms, big hair, and shoulder pads, they didn't just become less popular. These wines became totally passé. Unfortunately, the impact of Blue Nun and other bad, sweet German wines of its time continue to impact consumers' perception of Riesling to this day. The irony of this is twofold. Foremost, Blue Nun wasn't even primarily made from Riesling during its heyday. It was mostly Müller-Thurgau. And secondly, Riesling, just like any grape, can be made in a variety of styles, ranging from bone dry to properly sweet dessert wines. It's easier to find dry Riesling than most people think. In fact, once you dig into Riesling and the variety of styles in which it can be produced, I suspect you'll find the thing that most have in common is not sweetness, but instead acidity. Riesling has ripping acid. And in fact, it's the presence of this acidity that allows a producer, if they so choose, to make a really excellent sweet wine from the grape. Because, as we've talked about in previous videos, wines want balance. So the presence of acidity in the wine allows for the introduction or inclusion or retention of sweetness during production. So you don't end up with too much sweetness with not enough acidity. The combination of acid and sweetness also makes Riesling really excellent for pairing with food. I think of it this way. When a wine is bone dry, the demand for precise pairing is quite high. The complementary or compounding flavors really need to be very much on point for the pairing to work well. A little bit of sugar smooths off those edges and opens up a wider variety of potential dishes and cuisines for a wine to be paired with. But that's just one of the ways that I think about pairing food and wine. A little bit of sugar in the wine is something I prefer compared to a bone dry wine. When it comes to our sparkling Riesling at Treveri Cellars, we do produce a style that's a little bit on the sweeter end of things. It's what we call demi-sec, which actually translates to partially dry, but actually means partially sweet. That's just sparkling wine linguistics for you. As a fan of Riesling in general, and this wine in particular, I've loved watching it evolve since I started working with Treveri in 2015. See, when I first started at the winery, we sourced the fruit for this wine from a part of the Yakima Valley AVA, or American Viticultural Area, which is a little bit lower in elevation and warmer in temperature on average. But in 2016, we started sourcing a larger portion of the grapes that go into this wine from an AVA called Natchez Heights, which is just west of the town of Yakima. Natchez Heights is the highest in elevation and coolest climate of the AVAs in eastern Washington. From 2015 to now, I've seen this wine evolve from something a little bit more tropical, perhaps, on the nose with less minerality, to something with a little bit more citrusy, lime, and mineral on the nose. I've always enjoyed this wine, but I feel like it gets better year after year. So let's talk briefly about the types of food that I would pair with Rieslings of different styles. Now, when it comes to dry Riesling, it's going to be lighter in body without sugar there and high in acid. So something like a dry Austrian Riesling, I like to pair with maybe a light fish, sometimes lighter poultry, sometimes pork dishes. On the other end of the spectrum, for properly sweet Rieslings, something like a Baron Auslese from Germany is, for me, almost always going to go alongside dessert. So that might be perfect with apple pie. Between those two styles, a semi-sweet Riesling like we make, I love to pair those wines with spicy food. So something like our sparkling Riesling is going to pair beautifully against foods like spicy Indian, Southeast Asian, or Chinese food. In fact, that's just what we're going to do today. Tonight, I'm going to knock out one properly Thai dish and one Thai-inspired dish. The first is going to be Som Tom, or green papaya salad, and then we're going to do a kind of a Thai-inspired fried chicken. These shouldn't take too terribly long to make, especially since I've started the chicken marinating already. Let's knock them out and see how they pair. got away from me last night, and I just got focused on finishing dinner for my wife and I. So I actually am shooting this one day later. Let's talk a little bit about how I think this pairing does. With the fried chicken, the Riesling's lovely. And it does well with the Som Tom. Now, if you're like me and you like a little bit of dried shrimp in your Som Tom, I think that that actually has a very interesting interplay with the Riesling. The kind of, let's be honest, fishy element of that actually plays really nice with the minerality of our Riesling. Like I said, the fried chicken's really nice. The crunch with the fizz, with the sweetness, the inherent fattiness of fried chicken thighs with a little bit of acid, a little bit of sugar, a little bit of carbonation, all able to cut through. It's really great. And so all those things work really well with this pairing. This whole series of videos for me is an exercise in not only hopefully helping people learn a little bit more about how to pair food and wine, but also demonstrating that sparkling wine isn't just meant for special occasions, but can go with a huge variety of different dishes. So I hope that as we have gone through the last few videos, we've gone through this one, and we continue to move forward, that these videos help you imagine sparkling wine. Of course, our sparkling wine ideally, but sparkling wine in general, be it champagne, cava, prosecco, Francocorta, any of that, that they become part of your library, so to speak, of pairable wines for even a weeknight meal. Anyway, I really liked this dish. I had it, I'm here having fried chicken 2 nights in a row. Maybe not the best thing for my waistline, but certainly a pleasure, and even more so paired against our sparkling Riesling. Thank you so much for watching. Those of you who made it this far, please hop online and get over to the Treveri website. We're still doing 1 cent shipping throughout the country. So just enter WASTRONG, that's Washington Strong, WA-Strong, in the promo code, and you'll get 1 cent shipping on 6 bottles or more at the Treveri website. Grab some Riesling if you haven't tried it before, or if you've tried it before and you know you love it, and try pairing it with this dish, the fried chicken and Som Tom, or this fried chicken or Som Tom. And keep it in mind, especially as we're going into the holidays here. Sparkling, semi-sweet wines like this are perfect for holiday meals that have a ton going on. They cut through, but they don't overwhelm anything. Like I mentioned earlier, they've got a little bit of softer edges with the sugar in there, and I think that they pair really nicely with a wide variety of dishes. Thank you so much. Stay healthy, especially going into this holiday season. I hope that you've learned something and you'll be back with us in the future. From Treveri Cellars and Somm Saturday, I'm Wilson Cecil.